Hey guys, what's up? Misha from Get Good Drums here, and today I want to talk to you guys about feel. That's right, feel. Now, to different people that will mean different things. I'm talking specifically about how the feel of the drums can interplay with the riffs or the part that you have written. So, why do we care about this? Well, first of all, I think it keeps songs interesting. More importantly, and perhaps most importantly, I think it's an effective way to expand on your song without having to write new riffs. Now, that's not to say that new riffs are a bad thing. You definitely should have different sections and different parts. But it can also prevent your song from turning into a riff salad of sorts and make everything sound kind of cohesive by using a motif. In this video, I'm going to show you how I go about creating and adjusting the feel of songs and parts. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have the tools to be able to explore expanding on your ideas and not just resorting to writing new riffs to create new sections. Okay, so I've got this project right here, which is a very good example to show you guys what I'm on about. Let's take a look at this. This is a riff here. If you guys have heard my JST demo, you'll probably recognize this song. It's just a syncopated accent on the guitar. It's a 4/4 riff, but it's just playing around the beat. Now, that just by itself might sound kind of confusing, so with some context. Now, that right there doesn't sound very grounded. That's kind of the point of that section there. But let's play around with this. This is a good way to show you. And actually, this song is kind of interesting because it's really just based around this riff. There's a couple sections where there's a couple other riffs or variations, but it's all kind of based around this. And it's this sort of less is more approach that I want to kind of talk to you guys about today, rather than resorting to other riffs. And it's not that you should always write like this, but just kind of explore it. You'll be surprised what you can do with just one riff or one motif, just by changing a couple things, whether it's on the drum side or how you play it on the instrument side. And I'm going to cover that right now. So let's take a look at this section right here. So you can see we've got a snare drum backbeat right here, and the cymbals are just matching the kick drum accents, which actually can give it a bit of a groovy feel, but it can also make it feel like there isn't quite as strong a backbeat. It can make following the riff a bit more confusing. Let's, by contrast, just do some quarter note chinas, right? Just for the sake of argument. And you can see how that right there, just that one change right there, gives it a much straighter feel. And I've got these ghost notes in here, but let's just get rid of these ghost notes for a little bit. A bit of a busy feel, but now you can see how that's opened it up quite a bit. And this is a little thing I like to do. It's a little trick I picked up from Meshuggah, but doing the pedal chicks. Anywhere where you're not doing double bass, you can do pedal chicks. And at this tempo, we're at 110 right now, you can actually do the eighth notes. Again, this is based off what your drummer would play or what you might want, but you kind of get this pedal chick in between the cymbal hits. You can kind of hear it. It's one of those things where if you remove it, it'll be obvious. Makes it even more open. So that right there can show you how drastically you can change the feel of this riff with just a couple moves. Like let's undo this and see where we started. And you can see that sounds drastically different from that has a much more open, a less busy, a less frenetic sort of feel. And we haven't really changed anything that substantial if you think about it. The kicks and the snares are in exactly the same place. But let's play around with those a little bit. One very easy thing to do, let's bring those back in. Let's ditch the ghost notes for now. But double up on the time. That was a snare there, so we have to... So you can see how that right there now has like kind of an upbeat feel, right? Oops, forgot to put that snare there. Anyways, you get the idea there, but that's very upbeat. Compared to this sort of really open halftime feel. And then beyond that, let's play around with some different cymbals, because we've just been leaving this on the China this whole time, right? Let's say we move this, so we're gonna get rid of this because I want to move it to a hi-hat. Let's do like a closed hat, right? Very drastically different, and I think that's kind of cool. Now, I do think this needs a little bit more motion, so this is a great trick, and this is something, if you don't play drums or you don't really know how drummers would play this, this is kind of handy to know here. Unless you're specifically going for this kind of stiff, open, robotic feel like what I programmed there, what you'd be likely to do is hit your hi-hat with like as you kind of lift up, you do this sort of tip hit, this soft tip hit, and it creates this motion that I think fills in the gaps nicely. Again, as opposed to, and you can hear how that makes it sound a bit more realistic, I think. And that's already got a completely different feel than what we started with. The cymbals like the China and the crash will give it more of an open, energetic feel. This is kind of tighter. This is more contained. And again, this is entirely up to you what you want to do. Remember, we haven't really changed that much, but this is how drastically things can change when you play around with the cymbal choices and the velocities as well. As you've got here, we've got this pretty drastic difference. But that is something that a drummer would do, is kind of alternate between these hard downbeat hits and then the upbeat, nice tip hit. From there, we could mess this up even more if we wanted. Let's play around with some snare placements. So what's nice is that we've got the kicks matching up to all the accents here, right? So you can hear there. But this is something I'll do where I'll kind of just play around and just kind of place snares wherever. And I'll be honest, at this point, I've started to develop a feel for this, but a lot of this has come from just experimenting with stuff. Here you can see I'm placing snares specifically not on any accents in kind of open space. And with a riff like this, that means that the snare is always exposed, which can be kind of cool. You'll hear the snare for what it is. It's never clashing with guitars or really like anything that's as substantially loud as it is, so you can hear it. But one other thing you could do is just substitute some hits for it, right? So let's say we go for that. And again, that's not necessarily great sounding there. I'm just trying to prove a point. Let's see. And that's kind of a mishmash of feels there. So that isn't exactly what I'd go for. Something more in line with what I was doing originally could be interesting. And I have a section that basically does that to start out the song. That's the very first thing that we listen to. you might realize like this sounds like some people might not realize that this is 4/4 because there really isn't a whole lot that's accenting that feel. The only thing, if you look at it, is really just this pedal chick. Everything else is either matching up with a guitar stab or accenting against it like a snare drum, and then the cymbals are just matching the kicks, which are matching the guitar stabs. So it's a way of sort of dancing around the point, if you will. But then you can also get very straightforward, like I showed you earlier on this example, you know, where we had something. And again, it's the exact same guitar and bass part underneath. You know, we can also play with the guitar parts, and this is something that I like to play around with a bit as well. And I have to admit, like, Meshuggah does this a lot. They're one of my favorite bands. And you may notice this is something I do is I'll look at drummers that I like, and I look at bands I like, and I try to notice what they're doing on drums, and I'll emulate that or try to integrate that into what I'm doing, right? So now what we have here is the riff has changed a little bit. It's the same accents, but now rather than doing a staccato accent, we're doing these palm mutes that ring out. It sounds very heavy and messy. And on the section before, what I've done is I've put a whole bunch of toms there. So those toms are on the 16th notes, and they're sort of just filling in the beats. Got some cheeky little accents there. And what's holding it down is I've got these backbeat snare drums. And again, play around with that. Like if I wanted to do something that was a bit more upbeat. So all these rules apply in a similar way. I've just traded cymbals here for toms. And it gives a completely different feel, and it also works very differently because of the type of riff. Though I haven't actually tried, but let's just for fun, let's bring this riff over here, and let's see what it would sound like. So yeah, I pasted that in here. Let's give this a listen. And what do you know? It works. It's the same accents. It's the riff played a little differently. And I hope you can see how this is something that I experiment with. I will be sort of, you know, just moving things around and experimenting with different things. But fundamentally, we're working with the same idea here. And we're getting a lot of mileage out of it. So this is kind of what I want you guys to walk away from when you watch this, is really see how much you can develop that idea and what you can get from it. I'm not saying that every song should be this way. I'm not saying that you should always try to, you know, get 5 or 6 variations out of every idea and that should be every song. But it is interesting, and it's a cool thing to play around with. And in the right context, it can make a song sound very cohesive because it's always calling back to a motif. Again, I hope that this is a useful little view into how I approach writing drums and how you can change the feel of a part very fundamentally just by playing around with the placement, timing, and velocity of some drums. Okay guys, so just to round this out, I hope that you guys learned something useful, but just remember, these are just examples. This is just how I do it. Feel free to use all this stuff and tweak it to your own liking. That's the whole point. Have fun with it. I really just hope that this helps you the next time that you're writing a song and you feel kind of stuck. Maybe it'll spark some inspiration for you. And, shameless plug, if you are stuck or just want to try out ideas really quickly, you can always get our groove packs, the GGD groove packs. They work in the GGD groove player. It's so simple. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great day and happy songwriting.